Tonight, the story of a boy betrayed by his own brothers, thrown into a well and left to die, sold into slavery in a foreign land, falsely accused and imprisoned for years, who rose from that prison to become the minister of Egypt, who forgave those who destroyed him, and whose childhood dream came true decades later. The story of Prophet Yusuf. Assalamu alaikum. If you're here tonight, maybe you've had a long day. Maybe your mind is still carrying worries, questions, the weight of things you cannot control. Maybe you're the kind of person who finds peace not in empty silence, but in stories. Stories that remind you that even when everything seems wrong, Allah's plan is perfect. Tonight you don't need to do anything. You don't need to stay awake for every word. You don't need to remember it all. Just rest. Let your shoulders drop. Let your breathing slow. And if sleep takes you before the story ends, that's exactly what this is for. This is a story from Surah Yusuf. Allah calls it the best of stories. Let me tell you why. There was a boy named Yusuf. He lived with his father Yaqub and his 11 brothers in the land of Canaan. Yaqub was a prophet of Allah, a descendant of Ibrahim and Ishaq. Peace be upon them all. He was a righteous man who raised his children to worship Allah alone and to follow the straight path. But among all his sons, Yusuf was special. Not because he was the youngest, there was one even younger, his full brother named Binyamin. Not because he was stronger or wiser than the others. He was still just a boy. But there was something about Yusuf, a light in his character, a purity in his heart, a gentleness in his manner that made his father's heart tender toward him. The older brothers noticed this. They saw how their father looked at Yusuf, how he smiled when Yusuf spoke, how he kept him close. And in their hearts, jealousy began to grow. One morning, Yusuf woke from a dream. Not an ordinary dream, the kind that fades as soon as you open your eyes and means nothing, but a dream so vivid, so clear, so striking that it stayed with him. He knew even as a young boy that this dream meant something. He went to his father Yaqub and said, "O my father, indeed I have seen 11 stars and the sun and the moon. I saw them prostrating to me." These are the exact words preserved in the Quran. In Surah Yusuf, Yaqub listened carefully. He was a prophet. He understood the language of dreams. He knew immediately that this was not just a dream, but a vision, a message from Allah about what would come. 11 stars, Yusuf's 11 brothers, the sun and the moon, his father and mother, all of them one day would bow before him, not in worship, for worship belongs only to Allah, but in respect, in honor, in recognition of the rank and position that Allah would grant him. Yaqub's heart filled with joy. His son would be great, would be honored, would be chosen by Allah for something significant. But he also felt fear because he knew his other sons. He knew the jealousy that was growing in their hearts, and he knew that if they heard of this dream, it would only make things worse. And so Yaqub said to Yusuf, "O my son, do not relate your vision to your brothers, or they will contrive against you a plan. Indeed, Satan to man is a manifest enemy." He warned him, gently, lovingly, "Protect this secret, my son. Keep it close. Your brothers are not ready to hear it." But even as he spoke these words, Yaqub knew that what Allah had decreed would come to pass. The dream would be fulfilled. The stars would bow. But the path to that fulfillment, that path would be long and difficult. and filled with tests that would break most people. Yusuf, young and trusting, listened to his father's words. He kept the dream to himself, but the knowledge of it remained in his heart, a quiet certainty that Allah had plans for him, plans he could not yet see or understand. The older brothers gathered together one day away from their father's house. They sat in a circle and spoke in low voices, their faces dark with resentment. "Our father loves Yusuf and his brother more than us." One of them said, "Even though we are a stronger group, we are useful to him. We work, we help, but he looks at those two with more affection." The others nodded. They had all felt it, the difference in their father's treatment, the softness in his voice when he spoke to Yusuf, the concern in his eyes when Yusuf was out of sight. "Our father is clearly mistaken." Another said, "The Quran records their words. Our father is in clear error." They believed their father was wrong to favor Yusuf. They saw it as injustice. They did not understand that what they saw as favoritism was actually Yaqub's recognition of something pure in Yusuf's character, something chosen by Allah. "Kill Yusuf," one of them said suddenly. The words hung in the air like poison. "Or cast him out to some distant land. Then the face of your father will be exclusively for you, and after that you will be righteous people." It was a terrible plan, born of jealousy and anger and the worst parts of the human heart, to kill their own brother, to destroy an innocent boy simply because they wanted their father's attention. But another brother spoke up. Perhaps he was slightly less hardened. Perhaps there was still some mercy left in his heart. "Do not kill Yusuf," he said. "But if you must do something, throw him into the bottom of a well. Some travelers will pick him up if you must be doing something." It was not a merciful plan. It was still abandonment, still betrayal, still a form of murder, letting him die slowly rather than quickly, letting fate take him rather than their own hands. But to them, it seemed like a compromise. A way to get rid of Yusuf without bearing the full guilt of killing him directly. They agreed they would find a way to take Yusuf away from their father's house, away from safety, and they would leave him in a well, in the wilderness, where he would either die or be taken by strangers. Either way, he would begin from their lives. And then they told themselves things would go back to how they should be. Their father would love them. They would be his favorites. Everything would be fine. They did not understand that removing Yusuf would not give them what they wanted, that their father's grief would be far worse than his divided attention, that they were about to commit an act they would regret for the rest of their lives. But jealousy is blind, and the heart that entertains it becomes deaf to reason and mercy. The deception. The brothers went to their father, Yaqub, with false smiles and sweet words. "O our father," they said, "why do you not trust us with Yusuf, while indeed we are his sincere counselors? Send him with us tomorrow that he may eat well and play, and indeed we will be his guardians." They spoke of taking Yusuf out with them, to the fields, to play, to enjoy himself. They presented themselves as concerned brothers, wanting what was best for their younger sibling. But Yaqub hesitated. His father's heart sensed something, a warning, an unease. He looked at his sons and felt fear for Yusuf. "Indeed, it saddens me that you should take him," he said, "and I fear that a wolf would eat him while you are unaware of him." A wolf, he voiced his fear, not of his own sons. He could not imagine they would harm their brother, but of the dangers of the wilderness, of wild animals, of the vulnerability of a young boy away from his father's protection. The brothers seized on this. If a wolf should eat him while we are a strong group, they said, indeed we would then be losers. They made it sound absurd. How could anything happen to Yusuf when he was with all of them? They were many. They were strong. They would protect him. Nothing could go wrong. And Yaqub, despite his misgivings, despite the unease in his heart, agreed. Perhaps he wanted to trust his sons. Perhaps he felt it was wrong to always keep Yusuf so close. Perhaps he thought that refusing would only increase their resentment. Whatever his reasoning, he allowed it. He let them take Yusuf, and as Yusuf left with his brothers, walking away from his father's house with innocent trust, Yaqub watched with a heavy heart. He did not know what was about to happen, but somewhere deep in his soul, he feared it. The brothers went to their father Yaqub with false smiles and sweet words. "O our father," they said, "why do you not trust us with Yusuf while indeed we are his sincere counselors? Send him with us tomorrow that he may eat well and play, and indeed we will be his guardians." They spoke of taking Yusuf out with them, to the fields, to play, to enjoy himself. They presented themselves as concerned brothers, wanting what was best for their younger sibling. But Yaqub hesitated. His father's heart sensed something, a warning, an unease. He looked at his sons and felt fear for Yusuf. "Indeed, it saddens me that you should take him," he said, "and I fear that a wolf would eat him while you are unaware of him." A wolf, he voiced his fear, not of his own sons. He could not imagine they would harm their brother, but of the dangers of the wilderness, of wild animals, of the vulnerability of a young boy away from his father's protection. The brothers seized on this. "If a wolf should eat him while we are a strong group," they said, "indeed we would then be losers." They made it sound absurd. How could anything happen to Yusuf when he was with all of them? They were many. They were strong. They would protect him. Nothing could go wrong. And Yaqub, despite his misgivings, despite the unease in his heart, agreed. Perhaps he wanted to trust his sons. Perhaps he felt it was wrong to always keep Yusuf so close. Perhaps he thought that refusing would only increase their resentment. Whatever his reasoning, he allowed it. He let them take Yusuf. And as Yusuf left with his brothers, walking away from his father's house with innocent trust, Yaqub watched with a heavy heart. He did not know what was about to happen, but somewhere deep in his soul, he feared it. The brothers took Yusuf far from home, out into the wilderness where there were no witnesses, no one to see, no one to stop them. Yusuf walked with them happily at first. He was with his brothers. They were going on an adventure. He did not see the hardness in their eyes, did not notice the way they avoided looking at him directly, did not understand the tension in their silence. When they reached a remote place, far from any traveled path, they stopped. There was a well there, old, deep, the kind travelers used for water when they passed through, though few passed through this particular spot.
And then the brothers turned on Yusuf. The Quran does not give us the details. It does not tell us exactly what was said or how it happened, but it tells us the result. And when they took him and agreed to put him into the bottom of the well, they seized him. Perhaps Yusuf cried out. Perhaps he struggled. Perhaps he called to them, confused, frightened, asking why. Perhaps he looked at their faces and finally understood. These brothers he had trusted, who he thought loved him, were betraying him. They lowered him into the well, down, down into the darkness. The walls were rough stone. The air grew cooler. The light from above grew smaller and smaller until it was just a circle of sky far above. And then they let go. Yusuf fell the last bit and landed at the bottom. It was not a dry well. There was water, cold and murky, enough to stand in, but not enough to drown immediately, just enough to keep him alive, cold and terrified and alone. He looked up at the circle of light, saw his brothers' faces peering down at him, and then they moved away, left him there, walked away as if he had never existed. The Quran tells us something beautiful here, something that shows Allah's mercy even in the darkest moment. It says, "And we inspired to him. You will surely inform them of this affair of theirs while they do not perceive." Allah sent down revelation to Yusuf in that well, a message, a promise, a comfort in his darkest hour. You will survive this, you will grow, you will become strong. And one day, you will stand before these brothers again. They will come to you for help, and they will not even recognize you. And you will remind them of what they did this day. This was Allah's mercy, giving hope to a terrified child alone in a dark well, letting him know that this was not the end, that there was a plan, that Allah had not abandoned him. Yusuf held on to that promise. He did not know how he would survive. He did not know how he would get out. He did not know what would happen next. But he knew Allah had spoken to him, and that was enough. The brothers returned home as the sun was setting. They had prepared their deception carefully. They had killed a sheep and smeared its blood on Yusuf's shirt, the shirt they had taken from him before throwing him in the well. They came to their father in the evening, weeping, false tears, practiced grief. "Oh, our father," they cried, "indeed we went racing each other and left Yusuf with our possessions, and a wolf ate him, but you would not believe us, even if we were truthful." They presented the shirt to him, covered in blood. Evidence they thought of their story. Yaqub took the shirt, looked at it, looked at his sons with their tear-streaked faces and trembling voices, and he knew they were lying. The Quran tells us his response, "Rather, your souls have enticed you to something, so patience is most fitting, and Allah is the one sought for help against what you describe." He called them out gently but firmly. "Your souls have enticed you to something. You have done something wrong. This story you're telling me, it's not true." And then he said something profound. "So patience is most fitting. Not rage, not accusation, not demanding to know the truth or threatening them, just patience. Beautiful patience, the patience of a father who has lost his son but knows that Allah is in control, that whatever has happened, Allah sees it, Allah knows it, and Allah will handle it." Yaqub did not know if Yusuf was alive or dead. The brothers had said a wolf ate him, but the shirt, covered in blood though it was not torn. No wolf tears apart his prey and leaves the clothing intact. It was a detail they had forgotten in their hurry to create the deception. Yaqub noticed, and he knew that whatever had truly happened, his sons were responsible, but he did not press them. He did not force a confession. He simply said, "Allah is the one sought for help." He turned to Allah, made a dua, asked for help, asked for patience, asked that whatever had befallen his beloved son, Allah would protect him and bring him back safely. And then he waited with a broken heart but unshaken faith. He waited. Yusuf spent the night in the well, cold, wet, alone. The darkness was complete. He could not see his own hands in front of his face. He could only hear the echo of water dripping, the sound of his own breathing, perhaps small creatures moving in the darkness. It would have been easy to despair, to cry out in anger or fear, to lose hope. But Yusuf remembered the promise, the inspiration Allah had sent down. You will survive this. You will inform them of this day. Hold on. And so he held on through the long cold night, through the fear and the loneliness and the betrayal that cut deeper than any physical wound. Morning came. The circle of light above grew brighter, and then in the distance Yusuf heard something. Voices. A caravan was passing through. Travelers on their way to Egypt. They needed water and had stopped at the well. One of them lowered a bucket. It went down into the darkness. Yusuf saw it coming and grabbed hold. He was small, light. When the bucket was pulled up, he came with it. The man pulling the rope felt the weight. Too heavy for just water. He pulled harder, and when the bucket reached the top, instead of water, there was a boy. The man cried out in surprise. "Good news," he called to his companions. "This is a boy." They gathered around, staring at Yusuf. Who was he? Where had he come from? Why was he in a well in the middle of nowhere? The Quran tells us, and they concealed him as merchandise. They saw opportunity. A young boy, alone with no one to claim him. They could take him to Egypt and sell him. Child slaves were valuable, especially ones that looked as healthy and well-formed as Yusuf. They did not ask him where he came from. They did not try to find his family. They simply took him, added him to their caravan, and continued their journey to Egypt. Yusuf went with them. He had no choice. He was a child far from home, with no way to return. His brothers had made sure of that. And so he traveled with these strangers, heading toward a land he had never seen, about to enter a life he could never have imagined. But even then, even as a slave being taken to a foreign land, Allah was with him, guiding him, preparing him, leading him along the path that would eventually fulfill the dream of the stars and the sun and the moon bowing down. Egypt was a land of wonders, great stone structures that touched the sky, a river that brought life to the desert, markets full of goods from every corner of the known world, power and wealth and knowledge concentrated in a single place, ruled by a king they called Al-Aziz. The caravan arrived in the capital and made their way to the slave market. This was where they would sell their merchandise, the boy they had found in the well. Yusuf stood there among other slaves. But he was different. Even then, even as a child who had just been through trauma and betrayal, there was something about him, a dignity, a bearing, a light in his eyes that caught attention. The Quran tells us, "And the one from Egypt who bought him said to his wife, 'Make his residence comfortable. Perhaps he will benefit us, or we will adopt him as a son.'" The man who purchased Yusuf was a high official. Some scholars say he was the chief minister. Others say he was the head of the royal treasury. Whatever his exact position, he was wealthy and influential, one of the most important men in Egypt. He took Yusuf to his home, a grand house far beyond anything Yusuf had known before. Servants, fine clothes, abundant food, everything a child could want materially. And the official said to his wife, "Make his residence comfortable."
Treat him well. He is not just a slave. There is something about this boy. Perhaps he will benefit us. Perhaps we will adopt him as a son. The wife, her name is not given in the Quran, agreed. She saw what her husband saw. This boy was special, and so Yusuf was given a place in their household, not as a slave in chains, but as a ward, almost like a son. He was fed, clothed, educated, given comfort and care. The Quran says, "And thus we established Yusuf in the land, that we might teach him the interpretation of events." This was all part of Allah's plan. The betrayal, the well, the caravan, the sale, the placement in this specific house. Everything was being arranged so that Yusuf would be in exactly the right place at the right time to learn what he needed to learn and become who he needed to become. He learned the language of Egypt, the customs, the ways of the court and the palace. He learned about governance and trade and politics. He learned how to read people and interpret situations. And he learned patience, how to live with dignity even when your circumstances are not of your choosing, how to serve without resentment, how to be grateful for blessings even when you have lost so much. Years passed. Yusuf grew from a child into a young man, and as he grew, his character became even more evident. He was honest, trustworthy, intelligent, kind. Everyone who met him respected him. The official and his wife came to rely on him, to trust him with more and more responsibility, to see him not as a slave or even a servant, but as part of their household, perhaps even, as the official had hoped, like a son. But as Yusuf grew, something else was growing too. Something that would test him in a way his brother's betrayal never had. Yusuf had grown into a young man of extraordinary character and appearance. The Quran tells us that Allah gave him judgment and knowledge, wisdom and understanding beyond his years. But it also tells us something else. When describing Yusuf as he reached maturity, Allah says, "And we gave him judgment and knowledge." The scholars tell us that Yusuf was blessed with exceptional beauty, not just ordinary handsomeness, but a beauty that caught every eye, that made people stop and stare. That was itself a test. The wife of the official noticed. She had watched Yusuf grow from a boy into a man, had seen him become more capable, more knowledgeable, more composed, and somewhere along the way, her feelings toward him changed from maternal care to something far more dangerous. One day, when her husband was away and the house was empty of servants, she made her move. The Quran tells us, "And she, in whose house he was, sought to seduce him. She closed the doors, locked them, made sure no one could enter or see. And then she approached Yusuf and said words that can be translated as, 'Come you.'" It was a direct proposition, an unmistakable invitation. She was offering herself to him, expecting him to accept. After all, she was his mistress. He was in her house, under her power. She was beautiful, wealthy, influential. Why would he refuse? But Yusuf did refuse. The Quran records his response. He said, "I seek refuge in Allah. Indeed, He is my master who has made good my residence. Indeed, wrongdoers will not succeed." He sought refuge in Allah immediately, before anything else, before his own reasoning or moral arguments. He turned to Allah for protection from this temptation, and then he gave his reasons. He, meaning the official, his master, has made good my residence. He has been kind to me. He has taken care of me. He has trusted me. How can I betray that trust? And finally, indeed, wrongdoers will not succeed. This is wrong. This is a sin. And those who commit such acts will not prosper, not truly, not in the end. But the wife was not deterred. She advanced on him. The Quran says, "And she certainly desired him, and he would have desired her." This is an honest acknowledgement. Yusuf was human. He was a young man. The temptation was real. In his physical nature there was desire. This was not easy for him. It was not that he felt nothing. It was that he chose faith over desire. He chose Allah over his own impulses. The Quran continues, "Had he not seen the proof of his Lord?" Allah showed him something. Some scholars say it was a vision of his father Yaqub, reminding him of righteousness. Others say it was an angel appearing to warn him. Others say it was simply a powerful conviction in his heart, a certainty that Allah was watching, that this was a test, and that he must not fail. Whatever the exact nature of this proof, it strengthened him. It gave him the resolve to do what was incredibly difficult. He turned and ran toward the door. Yusuf ran for the door. The wife chased after him, grabbed at him, caught the back of his shirt. The fabric tore, ripped from the back as Yusuf pulled forward and the wife pulled back. And at that exact moment, the door opened. The official, the master of the house, the wife's husband, entered. He had returned unexpectedly. He saw them, Yusuf at the door, his shirt torn, his wife behind him, breathing hard. The wife did not hesitate, did not admit what had happened. Instead, she immediately accused Yusuf. "What is the recompense of one who intended evil for your wife?" she said, "but that he be imprisoned, or a painful punishment." She flipped the entire situation, made herself the victim, claimed that Yusuf had tried to seduce her, that he was the aggressor, that he deserved punishment. It was a calculated lie. She knew her husband would believe her. She was his wife after all. Yusuf was just a slave, no matter how trusted. Who would believe his word against hers? But Yusuf spoke calmly, clearly, with the dignity of someone who has nothing to hide. "It was she who sought to seduce me," he said. Just the truth, simple and direct. Now the official was caught in the middle. His wife, his trusted servant. One of them was lying, but which one? And then a witness spoke up. The Quran says, "And a witness from her family testified." Some scholars say it was her cousin. Others say it was an older relative living in the house. Whoever it was, they saw what had happened and knew the truth needed to be told. If his shirt is torn from the front, the witness said, then she has told the truth, and he is of the liars. But if his shirt is torn from the back, then she has lied, and he is of the truthful. It was a simple test. If Yusuf had advanced on her, his shirt would be torn from the front, where she would have pushed him away. But if he had been fleeing, it would be torn from the back, where she had grabbed him to stop him. They examined the shirt. It was torn from the back. The truth was clear. The official looked at his wife, looked at Yusuf, understood what had happened. He turned to his wife and said, "Indeed, it is of your plot. Indeed, your plot is great." He knew she had tried to seduce Yusuf. She had lied. She had attempted to destroy an innocent person to cover her own sin. To Yusuf he said, "Yusuf, ignore this, and you, wife, ask forgiveness for your sin. Indeed, you were of the sinful. Ignore it, let it go, don't speak of it." And to his wife, "Ask Allah for forgiveness. What you did was wrong." It was a strange resolution, not quite justice. The official was trying to protect his household's reputation, to to avoid scandal. He knew the truth, but he wanted it buried. Yusuf had been vindicated. His innocence was proven, but the situation was far from over because the wife had been humiliated. Her plot had been exposed, and people who are humiliated often seek revenge. Word of what had happened spread, as such things always do. The women of the city, the wives of other officials, the ladies of high society began to talk. The wife of Al-Aziz is seeking to seduce her slave boy. They whispered, "He has certainly struck her with love. Indeed, we see her in clear error." They criticized her, mocked her. A woman of her status chasing after a slave? How shameful, how foolish. She must be mad with love to behave so inappropriately. The wife heard these whispers, and she decided to show them, to prove to them that she was not foolish, that any woman would have done the same if they had seen what she saw. She sent invitations, hosted a gathering, prepared a feast, and when the women arrived, she gave each of them a knife, ostensibly for cutting fruit, and then called for Yusuf to enter and serve them. The Quran tells us, "And when they saw him, they greatly admired him and cut their hands and said, 'Perfect is Allah. This is not a man. This is none but a noble angel.' They saw Yusuf and were so struck by his appearance that they cut their own hands with the knives they were holding. They were so distracted, so overwhelmed that they didn't even notice the pain, didn't realize they were bleeding until they looked down and saw, and they exclaimed, 'This is not a man, this is an angel.' It was an exaggeration born of shock, but the point was made. They understood now. They understood why the official's wife had acted as she did. Faced with such beauty and character combined, what woman wouldn't be tempted? The wife spoke then, vindicated in her own mind. "So that is the one about whom you blamed me," she said. "And I certainly sought to seduce him, but he firmly refused. And if he will not do what I order him, he will surely be imprisoned and will be of those debased." She admitted it openly now. Yes, she had tried to seduce him, and yes, he had refused, but she was not done. She was giving him an ultimatum in front of all these witnesses. "Submit to me, or you will be imprisoned. Submit, or you will lose everything." It was a threat, an abuse of power. She would use her position to destroy him if he continued to refuse her. Yusuf heard this, understood the choice being given to him, and he made a decision that showed the depth of his faith. The Quran records his prayer. He said, "My Lord, prison is more beloved to me than that to which they invite me, and if you do not avert from me their plot, I might incline toward them and be of the ignorant. Prison is more beloved to me than this sin." Think about that. He would rather be imprisoned, lose his freedom, his comfort, his position than commit this wrong. He would rather suffer unjustly than sin against Allah. And he recognized his own weakness. "If you do not avert from me their plot, I might incline toward them." He didn't trust himself to keep resisting forever. He was human. The temptation was real and constant. He needed Allah's help, Allah's protection. He couldn't do this alone. And Allah answered his prayer. The Quran says, "So his Lord responded to him and averted from him their plot. Indeed, he is the hearing, the knowing." But the answer came in a way Yusuf might not have expected. Allah didn't just make the temptation go away. He didn't just change the wife's heart or remove Yusuf from the house. Instead, Allah gave Yusuf exactly what he had asked for. He gave him prison. The official and his household decided that despite Yusuf's proven innocence, despite the truth being known, it would be best if he was removed from the house. The scandal was growing. People were talking, the women were gossiping. Something had to be done to make it stop, and so they decided Yusuf would be imprisoned. It was unjust. He had done nothing wrong. He had resisted temptation. He had maintained his integrity, and his reward was prison. But Yusuf accepted it, even welcomed it, as he had said in his prayer, because prison meant separation from the constant temptation. Prison meant protection from a situation that was becoming impossible to navigate. Prison meant that he could maintain his purity even if it cost him everything else. The Quran tells us, then it appeared to them, after they had seen the signs, that he should surely be imprisoned for a time. They saw the signs, his innocence, his character, the torn shirt. They knew the truth, but they imprisoned him anyway. And so Yusuf entered the prison. A young man who had already lost so much, separated from his father, betrayed by his brothers, sold as a slave, falsely accused, and now imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit. Most people would have broken, would have raged against the injustice, would have questioned Allah. Why? Why is this happening to me? I have been faithful, I have resisted sin, and this is my reward. But Yusuf did not rage, did not question. He simply continued to trust, to be patient, to wait for Allah's plan to unfold. He did not know that this prison, this place of darkness and hardship, would be the next step in the path toward fulfilling the dream he had seen as a child. The dream of the stars and the sun and the moon bowing down. He could not see it yet, but Allah could, and that was enough. Prison in ancient Egypt was not like prisons today. It was dark, cold at night, stifling during the day. The food was minimal, the conditions harsh. Most prisoners were forgotten there, left to waste away until someone remembered they existed or decided their fate. But even in prison, Yusuf remained who he was, honest, patient, trusting in Allah. He did not complain, did not rage against the injustice, did not spend his days in bitterness, thinking about what his brothers had done, or what the official's wife had done, or how unfair his life had been. Instead, he continued to worship Allah, to be patient, to treat those around him with dignity and kindness. The other prisoners noticed. There was something different about this young man. Despite his circumstances, he had peace. He had certainty. He had a light about him that the darkness of the prison could not extinguish. Time passed. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Months became years. Yusuf grew older in that prison, from a young man into full maturity. And still he waited, still he trusted, still he believed that Allah had a plan, even if he could not see it. The Quran tells us, and there entered with him 2 young men into the prison. 2 new prisoners arrived. The scholars tell us that one was the king's wine bearer, the servant who served the king his wine at banquets. The other was the king's baker, the one who prepared the king's bread. Both had somehow offended the king or fallen under suspicion, and so they had been imprisoned until their cases could be investigated. They noticed Yusuf immediately. There was something about him, a wisdom, a calmness, a sense that he understood things others did not. One night, both of them had dreams, strange dreams, vivid dreams, the kind that feel significant, that stay with you after waking, that seem to mean something you cannot quite grasp. In the morning, they were troubled. Yusuf saw their faces and answered, "Why are your faces downcast today?" They told him, "We have had dreams, and there is no one to interpret them." In those times, dreams were taken seriously. Kings employed dream interpreters. Important decisions were made based on visions seen in sleep. But here in prison, there was no interpreter, no one to tell them what their dreams meant. Yusuf looked at them with compassion and said something beautiful. "Does their interpretation not belong to Allah? Relate them to me." He gave credit to Allah first, before claiming any ability himself, before taking any pride in his knowledge. He made it clear, interpretation comes from Allah. I am simply a means. And then he said, "Relate them to me." The wine bearer spoke first. "Indeed, I saw myself pressing wine," he said. He described his dream in detail, seeing himself press grapes, extract the juice, pour it into the king's cup, and serve it to him. Yusuf listened carefully, and then Allah gave him the interpretation. "As for one of you," Yusuf said, addressing the wine bearer, "he will serve wine to his master, but as for the other, he will be crucified, and the birds will eat from his head." The wine bearer would be released, restored to his position, returned to serving the king. But the baker, his fate would be much darker. He would be executed. The Quran tells us that before finishing, Yusuf added something. "The matter has been decreed about which you both inquire. This will happen. It is already decided. I am not guessing or speculating. Allah has shown me the truth of what your dreams mean." And then Yusuf turned to the wine bearer, the one who would be released, and made a request. "Mention me to your master," he said. It was a simple request, a human one. "Remember me. Tell the king about me. Let him know there is a man in this prison who has been unjustly imprisoned, who has done nothing wrong, who deserves to be freed." The Quran records his words. He said to the one whom he knew would go free, "Mention me before your master." But Satan made him forget the mention of him to his master, and he remained in prison for several years. 3 days later, just as Yusuf had interpreted, the king made his decision. The wine bearer was released and restored to his position. The baker was executed. Everything happened exactly as Yusuf had said. His interpretation was proven true. His knowledge was demonstrated clearly. But the wine bearer forgot. In the joy of being released, in the relief of returning to his old life, in the busyness of serving the king again, he forgot about Yusuf, forgot the promise he had made, forgot the man who had interpreted his dream and given him hope when he needed it most. And so Yusuf remained in prison for several more years. Some scholars say it was 7 years. Others say it was even longer, 7 years, after already being in prison for years before that, after already being separated from his father for years before that, after already suffering betrayal and slavery and false accusation. Most people would have despaired, would have felt abandoned by Allah, would have thought, "I did everything right. I resisted temptation. I was patient. I helped that man. And this is what I get? More years in prison." But Yusuf did not despair. The Quran tells us that asking the wine bearer to mention him was a small mistake, a moment of relying on a human being instead of relying solely on Allah. And so Allah extended his time in prison, not as punishment but as purification, as a deeper lesson in patience and trust. When you put your hope in people, they will forget you. But when you put your hope in Allah, He never forgets. And so Yusuf waited. trusting, patient, knowing that Allah's timing was perfect even when he could not understand it. Years passed, and then one night the king had a dream. He saw 7 fat cows grazing peacefully, and then 7 thin, emaciated cows came and ate the 7 fat cows. And the thin cows remained thin. They gained no weight, no health, despite consuming the fat ones. Then the dream shifted. He saw 7 green, healthy ears of grain, and then 7 dry, withered ears that consumed the green ones. The king woke troubled. This was not an ordinary dream. It felt significant, important, like a warning or a message about something to come. He called his court together, his advisors, his counselors, the wise men of Egypt. "Explain to me my dream," he commanded. "If you are able to interpret dreams." They looked at each other, murmured among themselves, and then they gave the worst answer possible. "These are confused dreams," they said, "and we are not learned in the interpretation of dreams." They had no idea, couldn't help him, didn't understand what the dream meant. The king sat on his throne, frustrated and worried. The dream had felt too real, too specific to be meaningless, but no one could tell him what it meant. And then, in that moment, after all those years, the wine bearer remembered. The Quran tells us, "But the one who was freed and remembered after a time said, I will inform you of its interpretation, so send me forth." After a time, after years of forgetting, suddenly in the king's moment of need, the wine bearer's memory came back. He remembered the young man in prison, the one who had interpreted his dream correctly all those years ago. "Send me forth," he said to the king. "Send me to the prison. I know someone who can interpret this dream." The king gave permission. The wine bearer rushed to the prison and found Yusuf. "Yusuf," he said, and the Quran records that he called him by name, showing that he had never truly forgotten, just failed to act. "O men of truth, explain to us about 7 fat cows being eaten by 7 thin ones, and the 7 green ears of grain and others dry, that I may return to the people so they may know." Yusuf listened, and Allah gave him the interpretation immediately. "You will sow for 7 years consecutively," Yusuf said, "and what you harvest, leave it in its ear except a little from which you will eat. Then will come after that 7 years of severe hardship, which will consume what you have saved for them except a little from which you will store. Then will come after that a year in which the people will be given rain, and in which they will press." It was complete, detailed, specific. Not just an interpretation but a plan. 7 years of abundance are coming. Plant, harvest, but don't consume everything. Store most of it in its ear in the grain husks, so it stays fresh longer. Because after those 7 years, 7 years of famine will come, drought. Crops will fail. What you stored will be all that keeps people alive. And after those hard years, rain will return. Abundance will return. The wine bearer stared at him, rushed back to the king with the interpretation. And when the king heard it, he knew immediately that this was true. This was what his dream meant. And more than that, he knew that whoever interpreted this dream was no ordinary prisoner. "Bring him to me," the king said. The messenger came to the prison with the king's command. "Come with me. The king wants to see you." It was the moment Yusuf had waited for. Years of patience, years of trust. And now finally the door was opening. Freedom was being offered. But Yusuf did something unexpected. He refused to go The Quran tells us, He said, return to your master and ask him, what is the case of the women who cut their hands? Indeed, my Lord is knowing of their plot. Return to the king. Ask him about the women, about what really happened, about why I'm in this prison. Yusuf wanted his name cleared first. He didn't just want to be released. He wanted justice. He wanted the truth known. He had been patient for years, but he would not accept freedom while still under the shadow of false accusation. The messenger returned to the king with this response, and the king, intrigued by this prisoner who refused immediate freedom in favor of vindication, agreed. He summoned the women, the official's wife, and all the ladies who had cut their hands that day. What was the matter with you when you sought to seduce Yusuf? He asked them directly, and they, standing before the king, could not lie. Perfect is Allah, they said. We know of no evil from him at all. We know no evil from him. He did nothing wrong. He was innocent. And then the wife of the official, the one who had started it all, spoke. The Quran records her confession. Now the truth has become evident. It was I who sought to seduce him, and indeed he is of the truthful. She admitted it, fully, publicly, in front of the king and all the court. She had lied. She had tried to seduce him. He had refused. He had been truthful all along. Yusuf was not present for this confession. He was still in prison. But when it was reported to him, he said something beautiful. That is, so he will know that I did not betray him in his absence, and that Allah does not guide the plan of betrayers. He was speaking about the official, the master of the house. Even after everything, Yusuf bore no ill will. He simply wanted it known that he had not betrayed the trust placed in him, that he had remained faithful even when it cost him everything. And then he added humbly, and I do not free myself from blame. Indeed, the soul is a persistent enjoiner of evil, except those upon which my Lord has mercy. Indeed, my Lord is forgiving and merciful. Even in vindication, he remained humble. He did not claim perfection. He acknowledged that every human soul struggles with evil impulses, that if it weren't for Allah's mercy, any of us could fall, that he was not better than others, just someone upon whom Allah had mercy. The king heard all of this, heard the confession, heard Yusuf's response, and he made a decision. Bring him to me, he said. I will appoint him exclusively for myself. The king wanted Yusuf in his service, wanted this man of wisdom and integrity close at hand. So Yusuf was released from prison, given fine clothes, brought before the king. The Quran tells us, and when he spoke to him, he said, Indeed, you are today in our position and trusted. The king recognized immediately what kind of person Yusuf was. You are in a position of trust. You are someone I can rely on. You are established with us. But Yusuf had a request. He didn't just want a position at court. He wanted something specific, something where he could do the most good. Appoint me over the storehouses of the land, he said. Indeed, I am a knowing guardian. Let me manage the food supply. Let me prepare for the famine I have interpreted in your dream. I know how to do this. I will guard it well. I will make sure Egypt survives what is coming. The king agreed. And so Yusuf, who had been a slave and a prisoner, became the minister of agriculture, the one responsible for all the grain in Egypt. One of the most powerful positions in the kingdom. The Quran says, and thus we established Yusuf in the land to settle therein wherever he willed. We touch with our mercy whom we will, and we do not allow to be lost the reward of those who do good. This was Allah's promise fulfilled. The years of patience, the years of trust, the years of maintaining integrity no matter the cost, all of it had been preparation for this moment. Yusuf took his position seriously. For 7 years, he oversaw the agriculture of Egypt. He made sure farmers planted abundantly, made sure the harvests were stored properly, in the year as he had instructed to preserve them longer, made sure nothing was wasted. And when the 7 years of abundance ended, just as the dream had shown, the 7 years of famine began. The drought came suddenly, the rains stopped. The Nile, which had always flooded predictably and brought life to the land, barely rose. Crops withered, animals died, people began to starve. But in Egypt, they had food because Yusuf had prepared. The storehouses were full, people came to buy grain, and there was enough, not just for Egyptians, but for surrounding lands as well. The famine spread across the entire region. It reached Canaan, where an old man named Yaqub lived with his remaining sons. Yaqub had never stopped grieving for Yusuf. Years had passed, decades now, but the loss of his beloved son was a wound that never healed. He had continued to be patient, as he had said that terrible night when his sons brought back the bloodied shirt, but the patience was mixed with ongoing sorrow. Now, as the famine struck, Yaqub and his sons faced starvation. They had heard that Egypt had grain, that someone there was distributing food to those who came to buy it. And so Yaqub called his sons together, the same sons who had betrayed Yusuf all those years ago, and told them, "Go to Egypt, buy grain for us, but do not enter all through one gate. Enter through different gates." He was trying to protect them. If something happened, if they were arrested or harmed, at least they wouldn't all be taken at once. His fear for his children's safety overrode his anger at what they had done. The brothers set out for Egypt, all of them except Binyamin, the youngest, the only full brother Yusuf had. Yaqub kept Binyamin close, afraid to let him go, afraid to lose another son. The brothers reached Egypt, made their way to the distribution center where grain was being sold, and there overseeing everything was the minister himself, Yusuf. They came before him to request grain, and he recognized them immediately, but they did not recognize him. Why would they? The last time they had seen Yusuf, he was a terrified boy being lowered into a well. Now he was a powerful man in Egyptian dress, speaking Egyptian, holding one of the highest offices in the land. More than 2 decades had passed. He had grown, he changed, become someone they could never have imagined. But Yusuf knew them, saw their faces, heard their voices, and remembered everything: the well, the darkness, the betrayal, the years of slavery and prison. All of it came back in a flood of memory. Yusuf did not reveal himself, not yet. Instead, he decided to test them, to see who they had become, whether they had changed, whether the jealousy and cruelty that had driven them to betray their brother was still there, or if time and hardship had softened their hearts. The Quran tells us, "And he recognized them, but they did not recognize him." Yusuf gave them their grain, treated them well, but before they left, he spoke to them. "Bring me your brother from your father," he said. He meant Binyamin. He had counted them and noticed one was missing. "Do you not see that I give full measure and that I am the best of hosts? But if you do not bring him to me, There will be no grain for you from me, and you will not approach me. It was a command. Bring your youngest brother next time or don't come back. The brothers agreed. We will try to persuade our father. We will certainly do it. But Yusuf had another plan. Before they left, he instructed his servants to place the brothers' payment, the money they had brought to buy grain, back into their saddlebags without them knowing. And so the brothers left, carrying grain, and unknowingly their own money returned to them. The brothers returned to Canaan, to their father Yaqub. "O our father," they said, "grain has been denied to us. So send with us our brother, that we may obtain measure, and we will certainly guard him." Yaqub's heart clenched. They wanted to take Binyamin to Egypt, the only son he had left from the mother he had loved, the only one who reminded him of Yusuf. "Should I trust you with him?" he said, "as I trusted you with his brother before?" His words were heavy, loaded with years of unspoken pain. "You took Yusuf from me. You claimed he was eaten by a wolf, but I never believed you. And now you want me to send Binyamin? But what choice did he have? Without grain, they would starve." And the brothers insisted they would protect Binyamin. They promised, they swore. And then as they unpacked their supplies, they discovered something. "O our father," they said, "what more could we desire? This is our merchandise returned to us." The money they had paid for the grain, it had been placed back in their bags. They hadn't stolen it. It had been returned to them. Didn't that prove the Egyptian minister was just and fair? Didn't that mean they could trust him with Binyamin? Yaqub was torn, but finally with a heavy heart he agreed. He made them promise, made them swear by Allah, that they would bring Binyamin back unless they were overpowered. And then he said something that showed his complete reliance on Allah. And Allah is witness over what we say. He was placing his son in Allah's hands, trusting that whatever happened, Allah would protect. Allah would know. Allah would handle it. The brothers prepared to return to Egypt, this time with Binyamin. And Yaqub, watching them leave, prayed with a heart that had known loss and patience and unshakable faith for decades. "My sons, do not enter from one gate, but enter from different gates, and I cannot help you at all against Allah. The decision is only for Allah. Upon Him I rely, and upon Him let those who rely, rely." The brothers returned to Egypt with Binyamin. They presented themselves to the minister, to Yusuf, and he saw his full brother for the first time in over 20 years. Binyamin was just a small child when Yusuf had been taken. He probably didn't even remember him. But Yusuf remembered holding him, playing with him, being the older brother he had never had a chance to be. Yusuf arranged accommodations for them, and when he had a private moment with Binyamin, away from the other brothers, he revealed himself. The Quran tells us, "And when they entered upon Yusuf, he took his brother to himself and said, 'Indeed, I am your brother, so do not despair over what they used to do. I am Yusuf, your brother, the one who was lost. Don't be upset about what our brothers did. Don't despair.'" Imagine Binyamin's shock. This powerful Egyptian minister was his long-lost brother, the brother he barely remembered, the one who had disappeared when he was a child. But Yusuf had a plan. He wanted to keep Binyamin with him, not to punish the other brothers, but to test them one final time, to see if they would abandon Binyamin as they had abandoned him. or if they had changed. He instructed his servants to place his drinking cup, a golden cup used for measuring grain, into Binyamin's bag without anyone knowing. Then, as the brothers were preparing to leave, loaded with grain and ready to return home, an announcement was made. "O caravan, indeed you are thieves." The brothers turned back confused and alarmed. "What have you lost?" they asked. "We are missing the king's cup," the official said, "and whoever brings it, he will have a camel's load of grain, and I am responsible for it." The brothers were indignant. "By Allah," they said, "you certainly know we did not come to cause corruption in the land, and we have not been thieves. Then what should be the recompense?" the officials asked, "if you are lying?" The brothers answered according to their own law. "Its recompense is that he in whose bag it is found, he himself will be the recompense. Thus do we punish the wrongdoers." In their custom, if someone stole, they themselves became the property of the one they stole from. They would become a slave. They were so confident in their innocence that they agreed to this immediately. The officials began searching. They searched the bags one by one, starting with the oldest brothers and working their way down. And then they reached Binyamin's bag. They pulled out the golden cup. The brothers stared in shock. The cup was in Binyamin's bag. According to their own words, he would have to stay in Egypt as payment for the theft. They turned to the minister, to Yusuf, though they still didn't know it was him, and pleaded. "O noble one," they said, "indeed he has a father who is an old man, so take one of us in his place. Indeed, we see you as a doer of good. Take me instead. Take any of us, but let him go. Our father is old. He has already lost one son. If he loses this one too, it will destroy him." For the first time, they showed concern for their father's feelings. For the first time, they were willing to sacrifice themselves for a brother. This was what Yusuf needed to see. They had changed. The jealousy was gone. The cruelty was gone. They had learned something from their years of hardship, but Yusuf maintained his role. "Allah forbid that we should take anyone but him in whose possession we found our merchandise," he said. "Indeed, we would then be unjust." According to the law, Binyamin would stay. The others could go. The brothers were devastated. The oldest of them said, "Go back to your father. I will not leave this land until my father permits me or Allah decides for me." He refused to return, refused to face his father with another lost son. Though others returned to Canaan, broken and ashamed. When the brothers returned without Binyamin and told Yaqub what had happened, the old man's heart shattered. He had waited decades for Yusuf, decades of patience, and now Binyamin was gone too. The Quran tells us, "And he turned away from them and said, 'Oh my sorrow over Yusuf.' And his eyes became white from grief, for he was suppressing his anguish. His eyes became white. The scholars say this means he lost his sight from so much crying, from so much grief held inside. He wept until he could no longer see. But even in this depth of sorrow, Yaqub did not lose faith. His sons said to him, "By Allah, you will not cease remembering Yusuf until you become fatally ill or become of those who perish. You're going to make yourself sick. You're going to die from this grief. Stop." But Yaqub replied with words that show the essence of faith. "I only complain of my anguish and my sorrow to Allah. And I know from Allah that which you do not know. I complain to Allah, not to people. I take my pain to Him. And I know something you don't know. I know that Allah has a plan. I know that He has not abandoned me. I know that somehow, in some way, this will be resolved. And then he said, O my sons, go and find out about Yusuf and his brother, and do not despair of the relief from Allah. Indeed, no one despairs of relief from Allah except the disbelieving people. Go back to Egypt. Search for Yusuf and Binyamin. Don't give up hope. Allah's mercy is always there, even when you can't see it. The brothers returned to Egypt once more, desperate now, broken. They came before the minister and begged, O noble one, we and our family have been afflicted with hardship, and we have come with little merchandise. But give us full measure and be charitable to us. Indeed, Allah rewards the charitable. And then Yusuf, seeing them humbled, seeing their desperation, knowing that the test was complete, finally spoke. Do you know, he said, what you did with Yusuf and his brother when you were ignorant? The question hung in the air. The brothers froze, stared at him. How did this Egyptian know about Yusuf? How did he know their story? And then, slowly, understanding dawned. Are you indeed Yusuf? They asked, their voices shaking. And Yusuf answered with words preserved in the Quran. I am Yusuf, and this is my brother. Allah has certainly favored us. Indeed, he who fears Allah and is patient, indeed Allah does not allow to be lost the reward of those who do good. I am Yusuf, the brother you threw in the well, the brother you sold into slavery, the brother you told your father was eaten by a wolf. I am here, I survived, I am alive, and Allah has elevated me to this position. The brothers stood in shock, horror, shame. They had come to Egypt begging for food from the very brother they had tried to destroy. They fell to their knees. By Allah, they said, certainly Allah has preferred you over us, and indeed we have been sinners. We were wrong, we sinned. You are better than us. Allah has shown this clearly. And then Yusuf said words that would echo through history as one of the most beautiful examples of forgiveness ever recorded. No blame upon you today. May Allah forgive you, and He is the most merciful of the merciful. No blame, no revenge, no punishment, no bitterness, just forgiveness, complete, total, unconditional. Yusuf sent his brothers back to Canaan with his shirt, the shirt he was wearing. Take this shirt of mine, he said, and cast it over the face of my father. He will recover his sight and bring to me your entire family. The brothers left carrying the shirt, carrying hope, carrying the news that would change everything. Back in Canaan, Yaqub suddenly said to those around him, indeed, I find the smell of Yusuf, if you do not think me senile. He smelled Yusuf, felt his presence somehow, even though his sons were still days away. The people around him said, by Allah, indeed you are in your old error. They thought he was confused, delusional, still caught in his grief. But then the caravan arrived. The brothers came running. They took Yusuf's shirt and cast it over Yaqub's face, and immediately his sight returned. The Quran says his sight returned after decades of blindness from crying, after decades of grief. The moment Yusuf's shirt touched his face, he could see again. Did I not tell you, Yaqub said, that I know from Allah that which you do not know? I told you not to give up hope. I told you Allah had a plan. And now you see the entire family prepared to travel to Egypt to reunite with Yusuf. After decades of separation, they would be together again. They entered Egypt. They came to the palace where Yusuf now lived, and when they entered upon him, Yusuf embraced his parents. Enter Egypt, he said, safe and secure if Allah wills. He elevated them upon the throne, seated them in places of honor. And then the moment came. They all bowed before him, his 11 brothers, his father, his mother, just as the dream had shown all those years ago when he was just a boy. 11 stars, the sun, the moon, all bowing down. The Quran tells us, and he raised his parents upon the throne, and they all fell down in prostration to him, not in worship. Worship belongs only to Allah, but in respect, in honor, in recognition of what Allah had made him. And Yusuf turned to his father and said, "O my father, this is the interpretation of my dream from before. My Lord has made it reality. The dream from childhood, the vision that had started everything, it had come true. Every detail, every element." But Yusuf did not take credit. He did not boast about his rise to power. Instead, he acknowledged everything that had happened, the good and the bad, as part of Allah's plan. He was certainly good to me when he took me out of prison and brought you from the desert after Satan had caused estrangement between me and my brothers. Indeed, my Lord is subtle in what he wills. Indeed, he is the knowing, the wise. He mentioned the prison, not the well. He didn't focus on the betrayal. He acknowledged that Satan has caused estrangement, putting the blame on Satan's whispers rather than on his brothers directly. And he acknowledged that Allah had been good to him through everything, through the well, the slavery, the false accusation, the prison, the long years of waiting. Through all of it, Allah had been good to him. The story was complete, the family reunited, the wrongs forgiven, the dream fulfilled. But Yusuf had one more thing to say, a prayer, a dua that showed the depth of his understanding. "My Lord, you have given me sovereignty and taught me the interpretation of dreams. O Creator of the heavens and the earth, you are my protector in this world and in the hereafter. Cause me to die a Muslim and join me with the righteous." After everything he had achieved, power, position, wealth, reunion with his family, his final prayer was not for more worldly success. It was for faith. "Let me die as a Muslim, as one who submits to you, and join me with the righteous in the hereafter." Because he understood that all of this, the position, the power, the palace, was temporary. What mattered was how he would stand before Allah when this life ended. The Quran ends the story with a direct address from Allah to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. That is from the news of the unseen which we reveal to you. And you were not with them when they put together their plan while they conspired. This story, every detail of it, is true. You were not there, Muhammad. You did not witness it. But we are telling you exactly what happened. We are revealing to you the truth of what occurred. And then Allah says something profound. And most of the people, although you strive, are not believers. Even with the stories like this, even with signs and miracles and proofs, most people will not believe. Not because the evidence is lacking, but because faith requires more than evidence. It requires surrender, submission, trust. The story of Yusuf is called the best of stories by Allah Himself in Surah Yusuf. Why? Because it contains everything: betrayal and forgiveness, sin and resistance, despair and hope, loss and reunion, justice and mercy. But more than anything, it is a story about patience. Not just one kind of patience, but many kinds. Let us reflect on them now. As you rest, Yusuf showed us patience in every stage of his life. Each test required a different kind of sabr, patience with betrayal. When his brothers threw him in the well, he did not curse them, did not spend his life consumed by thoughts of revenge. He held on to the promise Allah gave him in that dark moment and waited, patience with injustice. He was sold as a slave though he was free. He was imprisoned though he was innocent. At every turn, the world treated him unfairly, but he did not rage against it. He accepted what Allah had decreed and continued to do good wherever he was. Patience with temptation. When the official's wife tried to seduce him, he could have given in. He was young. The temptation was real. He could have justified it. After all, hadn't he suffered enough? Didn't he deserve some pleasure? But he chose Allah over his desires. He chose prison over sin. That is patience of the highest kind. Patience in waiting, years in slavery, years in prison, years of not knowing if his situation would ever change. Most people lose hope when they cannot see an end, but Yusuf continued to trust. Day after day, year after year, decade after decade, patience in power. When his brothers came to him broken and desperate, he had all the power. He could have destroyed them, imprisoned them, made them suffer as he had suffered. But he chose forgiveness. He chose mercy, because patience is not just about enduring hardship. It is also about restraining yourself when you have the power to take revenge. This is why the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "The strong person is not the one who can overpower others. The strong person is the one who controls himself when angry." Yusuf was strong in every way that matters. But Yusuf was not the only one who showed patience in this story. His father Yaqub showed us a different kind of sabr, the patience of a parent. Yaqub lost his beloved son and did not know if he was alive or dead. Every day for decades he woke with that uncertainty. Every night he went to sleep with that pain. But he continued to live, to take care of his other children, to fulfill his responsibilities as a prophet and a father. The patience of faith over proof. Yaqub never saw evidence that Yusuf was alive. He had a bloodied shirt and his son's story about a wolf. Every logical reason to believe Yusuf was dead. But in his heart, he felt something different. He trusted that feeling. He trusted Allah's wisdom, and he never stopped hoping. The patience of beautiful sabr. When his sons brought him the false news, he said, "So patience is most fitting." Not angry patience, not bitter patience, but beautiful patience, sabr jameel. Patience that is gracious, that does not complain to people, that takes its pain to Allah alone. Years later, when his sons accused him of being delusional for still remembering Yusuf, he said, "I only complain of my anguish and my sorrow to Allah." This is the essence of beautiful patience. Feel the pain. Yaqub did not pretend it didn't hurt. Acknowledge the grief. He wept until he lost his sight. But take it to Allah. Complain to Him. Ask Him for help. Don't burden people with bitterness or resentment. Yaqub showed us that patience does not mean suppressing your emotions. It means directing them to the right place, to the one who can actually help, to the one who understands, to the one who will never grow tired of hearing your pains. The Quran shows us that every prophet was tested with patience, each in their own way. Prophet Ayub was tested with illness. His wealth was taken, his children died, his health failed. Painful sores covered his body. People abandoned him. His own wife urged him to give up, but he remained patient for years. And when he finally made dua, he said simply, "Indeed, adversity has touched me, and you are the most merciful of the merciful." Not demanding, not complaining, just a humble acknowledgement and a request for mercy. And Allah restored everything he had lost and more. Prophet Nuh was tested with rejection. He called his people to Allah for 950 years, nearly 1,000 years of preaching, and only a handful believed. Imagine speaking truth for centuries and almost no one listening. But he continued, patient, persistent, never giving up, never saying what's the point. He fulfilled his duty regardless of the results. Prophet Ibrahim was tested in different ways throughout his life, thrown into a fire by his own people, commanded to leave his wife and infant son in a barren desert, commanded to sacrifice his son just as he was growing into a young man. Each test different, each requiring complete trust in Allah, and he passed everyone with beautiful patience. Prophet Musa was tested with leadership, leading a people who constantly complained, who doubted, who rebelled, who worshipped a golden calf while he was on the mountain receiving revelation from Allah. The Quran shows us Musa's frustration. He was human. He felt anger, but he remained patient with them, continued to guide them, continued to pray for them. All of these prophets and every prophet in between showed us that tests come in different forms: loss, illness, rejection, betrayal, leadership challenges, temptation, long waiting. Each test unique, but the response is the same: trust in Allah and beautiful patience. Why does Allah test those He loves? Why did Yusuf have to go through the well and slavery and prison? Why did Yaqub have to lose his sight from crying? Why do any of us have to suffer? The Quran gives us the answer in the story itself. Yusuf said, "My Lord is subtle in what He wills." Subtle. The Arabic word is latif. It means Allah works in ways we cannot see, in ways that seem wrong or painful in the moment. But when we look back, we understand they were perfect. If Yusuf had not been thrown in the well, the caravan would not have found him. If the caravan had not found him, he would not have been taken to Egypt. If he had not been in Egypt, he would not have been in the official's house. If he had not been in that house, he would not have been tested with temptation and proven his character. If he had not been falsely accused, he would not have been in prison. If he had not been in prison, he would not have met the wine bearer. If he had not met the wine bearer, the king would not have known about him. If the king had not known about him, he would not have become the minister who saved Egypt and his own family from starvation. Every piece of hardship was necessary. Every painful moment was part of the path to something better. This is what Allah means when, in Surah Baqarah, He says, "But perhaps you hate a thing, and it is good for you. And perhaps you love a thing, and it is bad for you. And Allah knows while you do not know." We see the moment. Allah sees the entire story. We feel the pain of the well. Allah sees the throne that comes after. We cry in the darkness. Allah knows the light that is being prepared. Patience is not passive. It is not just accepting whatever happens and doing nothing. Look at Yusuf. He was patient, but he also worked. He interpreted dreams. He managed the storehouses. He planned for the famine. He was active and responsible, while also trusting Allah. Patience means doing what you can and leaving the results to Allah. It means working with full effort while knowing that success comes from Him alone. It means being content with His timing even when you wish things were different. The reward for patience is mentioned throughout the Quran. Allah says in Surah Az-Zumar, "Indeed, the patient will be given their reward without account, without measure, unlimited, because patience is hard." Patience when everything in you wants to give up, that is valuable to Allah beyond calculation. And the reward is not just in the next life. Yusuf's patience led to reunion with his family in this life, to honor and respect, to the fulfillment of his dream, to a position where he could do immense good, saving thousands of people from starvation. Yaqub's patience led to his sight being restored, to holding his son again after decades, to seeing his family reunited, to joy after so much sorrow. This is what patience does. It does not remove the test, but it transforms you during the test. It builds your character, strengthens your faith, prepares you for what comes next. And when the patience is rewarded, when Allah's plan finally becomes clear, the joy is multiplied because you know that Allah heard every prayer, saw every tear, counted every difficult moment, and He rewarded it all. As you rest tonight, think about what you are being patient with, what trial you are enduring, what hardship you are carrying. Maybe it is like Yusuf's betrayal by someone you trusted, injustice, being in a situation you did not choose and cannot escape, waiting for years for something to change. Maybe it is like Yaqub's, the pain of losing someone you love, the uncertainty of not knowing, the grief that does not end. Maybe it is something else entirely, an illness, a financial hardship, a broken relationship, a dream that seems impossible, a prayer that Allah has not yet answered. Whatever it is, know this: your patience is seen. Every moment you choose to trust instead of despair, every time you turn to Allah instead of turning away, every tear you shed in private prayer, every day you continue to do what is right even when it feels pointless. Allah sees it all, and He is recording it all. And one day, in this life or the next, He will reward it all. The Quran tells us in Surah Baqarah, "O you who have believed, seek help through patience and prayer." Indeed, Allah is with the patient. Allah is with you in the well, in the prison, in the long years of waiting, in the moment when everything seems wrong and you cannot see the purpose. He is with you, closer than your own jugular vein, hearing every whispered prayer, planning something beautiful that you cannot yet see. So be patient, as Yusuf was patient, as Yaqub was patient, as all the prophets were patient, not because it is easy, but because you trust the one who is testing you, because you know He loves you, because you believe that His plan is better than anything you could plan for yourself. And one day you will look back and understand. You will see how every piece of hardship was actually a piece of mercy, how every closed door led to a better open door, how every tear watered the seeds of a blessing you could not have imagined. That is the promise of patience. That is what Allah tells us through the story of Yusuf. Trust, wait, work, pray, and know that the one who brought Yusuf from the well to the throne, who reunited Yaqub with his beloved son, who never fails in His promises, that same Allah is handling your story too. The story of Yusuf is complete, from the dream to the well, from slavery to prison, from prison to power, from separation to reunion, from betrayal to forgiveness. Every step of the journey had meaning. Every moment of patience had purpose. Every tear was counted, every prayer was heard. And the story ends not with Yusuf's triumph, but with his prayer. His dua asking Allah to let him die as a Muslim and join him with the righteous, because he understood that this world, with all its possessions and palaces, is temporary. What matters is what comes after. What matters is how we stand before Allah when this life ends. The prophets were tested most severely because their ranks were highest. Their patience earned them eternal stations we can barely imagine. Their trust in Allah, when every worldly reason said to give up, is why we still tell their stories thousands of years later. Tonight, as you rest, remember Yusuf's patience. Remember Yaqub's beautiful sabr. Remember that Allah is subtle in what He wills, that He is planning something for you that is better than what you are planning for yourself. Remember that patience is not weakness, it is strength. The strength to keep going when everything says to stop. The strength to forgive when you have the power to take revenge. The strength to trust when you cannot see the path. May your sleep tonight be peaceful. May your patience be rewarded. May your trials be transformed into blessings. And may you wake knowing that whatever you are facing, Allah is with you, guiding you, preparing something beautiful. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace and mercy and blessings of Allah be upon you now and always.